short, lengthy story here, but many of you know I'm a journalism nerd. I grew up as a kid that read newspapers, loved newspapers. All I ever wanted to do was work for a newspaper. And when I was 15 years old, I went to work at the Baltimore News-American and then Sports First and, of course, the Evening Sun. Many of you are familiar with my bio. But, I feel like I've kind of, all the people that are alive, I have crossed paths with them at some point on our journey. And, hell, I've had 2 or 3 of them on this week, from Ron Borges and Clark Judge and other people that have been through Baltimore, and Dan Shaughnessy and other people. This guy is a Baltimore guy who went to Calvert Hall, went to Loyola, worked at the Baltimore News-American and the Detroit Free Press, as well as the Philadelphia Daily News, where he really created quite a name for himself. He's a award-winning writer and journalist. He's written The Writings of Great Writings, Like Any Normal Day, A Story of Devotion, his first book. You can go check that out. But I've never had him on the program. I've never been in his company. We've never been in the same room together, but we are Facebook friends. And, such is life in the 21st century. And in the middle of the afternoon on Sunday, Mark Cram Jr. was doing fanboy activities with another great writer in Norman Chad at Oriole Park at Camden Yards and drinking beer. And I thought, you know what? I didn't know he was an Oriole fan. I thought he was a stodgy old fuddy-duddy, washed-up journalist who hated sports. And lo and behold, Mark Cram Jr., it is nice to know you. I know we've been Facebook connected. We have many, many mutual friends.
Sure.
And you are a Philadelphia sports writing sort of legend guy. But I've never had you on, and I didn't know that you were like an Oriole fanboy, and you are. So welcome to the program. You're screwed now. I'm going to call you once a month, and we're going to talk Oriole baseball.
I'll come on anytime to talk about the Orioles. My heart beats for them.
Well,
and I'm still coming down off off that 12-run high from yesterday.
Well, there are a lot of home runs and a lot of offense. I guess you picked the right day to come down. But first off, welcome. It's nice to have you on. I just want to tell you this little story because it'll either warm your heart or make you nauseous. I'm not sure. But when I was a kid working at these newspapers, names like yours were legendary, and only because you left. I heard about Clark Judge. I heard about Mark Cram. I heard about, I knew Bernie Miklasz and Jeff Gordon and a bunch of guys that had left, and Barry Levine. I worked with those guys, and Mike Resigliano, who tunes in every day to WNST. And I never knew you, and Jack Gibbons hired me. He's responsible for my career, as well as Ken Rosenthal and a number of other people's careers.
Sure.
And we honored him a couple of years ago, and, I brought a bunch of our friends on, and I know you know Dick Girardi. Dick's a regular around here during horse racing time for the Daily News, but little do I know that you have this fascination with the Orioles, and you should be a jaded old sports writer at this point. And,
luckily I escaped sports writing in 2013. I left the Daily News after about 27 years there, and to go on to write books. But I've been an Oriole fan since 1963. I was 6 years old or something like that. I opened up a pack of cards, and there was Brooks Robinson staring back at me. And, boy, I'll tell you something, Nestor. I was really lucky to grow up in Baltimore at that time because the Orioles were just starting to get great. And, as I thought back on it as an adult, thinking about why that was important to me, they really showed us what excellence looked like. They really did. It doesn't matter what you went on to in life. You can think back about how they played the game and how they won, so consistently. It really gave you an idea of what, as I say, excellence was supposed to be, and not only the Orioles, but the Colts, and then when Earl Monroe came with the Bullets, the Bullets. I mean, all those teams were really terrific. And if you grew up during that time, you sort of have it takes a little getting used to how they play the game today, which we can get into that if you'd like to. But
well, I came on the back end of that. So I was born in '68. Obviously, Luis came to America, met my mom in Dundalk. I was the product of that in '68. And, my first memories are 72, 73, 74. And, it's not without, noting that Don Baylor was in the outfield, at that point in time and was one of my first favorite players. I was never a Brooks Robinson guy. He was kind of of at the end of his rope, 74, 75. And,
That's right,
he signed a book for me. Third base is my home over at the Hochul Cone at East Point Mall and the Brooks Robinson Sporting Goods store and all that stuff. And, I guess I had the afterglow of all of that because of my father. My father was from Scranton, Pennsylvania. He lived in Baltimore from the 40s, met my mom, and got married at Mount Carmel Church in Essex in 1945. And my dad never drove, worked at the steel mill, loved the Orioles, loved the Colts, loved basketball, loved boxing. All of the traditional, never loved the track. My dad wasn't a gambler because he stood in soup lines and bread lines in Pennsylvania, back during the Depression in the 1920s and 30s. So my dad never gambled, but he loved all the traditional sport magazine, Sports Illustrated, 1960s kind of sports. And the afterglow of that was the Orioles were the little engine that tried in the 70s, and 79 to 83 was that nice era. That feels like a long time ago. And then, of course, the Colts had the Burt Jones thing for 5 minutes, and Bubba Baker broke his shoulder, and then that was the end of that, and the end of the franchise, too.
It's funny you mentioned Don Mitt. Well, not funny. He died today, which was very sad, but the Orioles traded Frank Robinson to make a place for him, and I thought at the time that they traded Frank too soon. But they had Baylor and Gritch coming up, and they needed places for them. But Oakland was getting very good, and then they traded Baylor in a wrong-headed move for Reggie Jackson, which I thought was a.
Well, that was an interesting summer, right? I mean, were you a sports writer then? When were you at the News American?
I started in 78.
So you had missed that, okay.
My dad used to be a writer at Sports Illustrated. Before that, the Sun Papers. He was a columnist from, say, 1960 to 63.
So you were born into this mess, quite frankly, right?
Yeah, right. That's true. That's true.
Well, I mean, for the Oriole fandom, I guess when it does touch you like that and you've gone on this life journey, being a writer, being a sports writer, this was the thing you took with you, the Orioles. I did not know that about you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I just, wherever, I worked in Detroit and Philly, and, I just, followed the Orioles very closely. When they were good in the late 90s, my dad was still alive. We were on the phone, what was it? Messina was pitching that great game against Cleveland, and they just weren't scoring any runs for him. Geez, I lived and died on every pitch.
Well, that's probably the last great game the Orioles played, right up until the the Delman Young double off the wall against Detroit. But I just wrote a book on Peter Angelos. I wrote it about 4 years ago, The Peter Principles, and take a look at it. It chronicles all of the nonsense that's going on here. I think it's very, very hard to be an Oriole fan, and given the way the place has been run, the disregard for the fans here, the open profiteering by Angelos, but more than that, sort of the cowardice of hiding behind all of it. That's the part that really bothers me.
We were on the verge, as Oriole fans, back in the 70s, of really having a great thing happen to the organization. Bill Veeck came very, very, very close from buying the team from Jerry Hofberger. If he bought the club, he wouldn't have been able to hang on to it through free agency, of course. But, it would have been wonderful to have him as one of the owners of the team. It would have been so interesting. But we got a succession of lawyers and hedge fund operators and what have you owning the club, and really kind of soulless, in many ways,
Well, my press pass was confiscated 11 years ago for asking tough questions, and I think asking tough questions. There are a lot of tough questions about the Orioles if you're going to learn how the sausage is made. If you're just going to show up and say, well, they gave Chris Davis some money, and what are we going to do with Machado? But I go through this on a daily basis and have for 25 years of my life now, Mark, talking about the Orioles, and they haven't been relevant enough over the last 25 years the way they should have been with that ballpark being built. And really at the trading deadline last week, this sort of half-in thing that they've done this year should be a real cautionary tale for everyone, because the Machado thing is coming up, the Adam Jones thing's coming up, but more importantly, I think the Buck Showalter, Dan Duquette thing's coming up. They're going to enter next season lame duck. This is a choppy time to be involved with the Orioles.
Choppy.
Yeah.
I thought they'd make some big moves at the trading deadline. I really did. I thought that they'd move some big names, but I guess they couldn't get anything back. But I just don't understand how this starting pitching staff got into such disarray. It's just, I mean, Jimenez is finished. Tillman's finished. So they got, Buddy looks like he might be something, but Gausman is not nearly as good as I thought he would be. I thought this guy would really come on. He's been nothing.
Well, if you're peeling back the onion in the whole thing, I mean, the fact that Arrieta left, and I mean, a lot of the pitchers have left this organization, gone other places. We're going to see Bridwell this week, staying up late out on the West Coast, and Davies and Rodriguez up in Boston, and the guys they've gotten rid of, they've gone other places and done. I mean, hell, Bud Norris is closing games out in a pennant race.
It makes you wonder about their pitching coach, right? I mean,
it makes you wonder about the whole system. What they're doing.
The whole system, absolutely right. When Ray Miller was the coach, pitching coach, they used to wear a shirt that says "Work fast, throw strikes." Right?
Right.
That was it. When I was around them, they used to walk around the clubhouse with those T-shirts.
And mixed speeds was the other one.
Mixed speeds, yeah.
Work fast, mixed speeds, throw strikes.
That's right. I forgot that part. But I got a season ticket plan, a Sunday plan. I drive down to Philly, and the first game was against the Yankees, and Wade Miley's walking 12 batters. I said, what the hell am I looking at here? Jesus, this isn't Major League pitching.
Well, when you're into late July and you got 4 guys in your rotation with ERAs above 6 and you're sending them out there every 5th day, it's really an indictment of the minor league system, which they had that opportunity before the trading deadline to deal Britton, to maybe deal Machado, to look at maybe even dealing Adam Jones, who would have to check off. But, dealing some guys away and saying, let's save some money, let's get some prospects, sort of what the Yankees have done, and maybe even what the Astros and some other organizations have done.
You know what? In my opinion, it's systematic throughout baseball. We got into this mindset that over the last 20 years or so of, using the bullpen ad nauseum, right? And I'm going to sound like I'm 100 years old right now, but, please forgive me. But I was watching Gausman pitch. He had a shutout. He was winning against the Rays. He had a 7-inning shutout. When Palmer was pitching, he wouldn't have left the mound with a shutout going at gunpoint. He wouldn't have.
Well, this is making us all, geese at this point.
Well, I know, and that's what they say. Oh, you're an old geese. But the game was played better then. It was. And you know what? They're worried about the pitcher's arms and what have you. Hey, Palmer had a long career, pitched a lot of innings. All those guys back then pitched a lot of innings. It's not about the amount of work they get. And it makes for, and back then, you have the pitching matchups. The drama would really unfold in the 7th, 8th, and 9th inning with these guys going head-to-head.
Well, it's a different game now. I had a long-time baseball guy had a long conversation at lunch with me last week. He's in the big leagues. If I mention his name, he'll be blackballed, from the Angelos tribe, so I won't do that. But we were talking about how the game has changed, how it's evolved, how sabermetrics have changed the game, that you're looking for matchups and needle in a haystack and lefty-righty and all of that sort of baseball stuff that's going on here. But the rosters haven't expanded. You know what I mean? Like, it seems to me if you want to use this many relief pitchers, you got to add a couple of guys to the roster because there's not enough pitching to go around.
Yeah, it's true. And, a lot of pitching today, a lot of young pitchers today get blown out early. I don't think that they're necessarily, groomed properly, and high school and college and so forth. Lots of arm trouble, I was down with Dr. Andrews for a piece for the Daily News back in 2000, I guess 8 it was, or 9. And he had like 4 operating theaters going at once for that. The arm. What is it? The elbow surgery that he does.
Yeah, anytime his name would come up, guys got trouble. You got to go see Dr. Andrews. That's not good.
He said he was telling me that on a busy day he would do as many as 22 surgeries. He'd go from one. his assistants would sort of open up the arm and sort of expose the nerve or the ligaments, and he would go in, tie him up, and go from one theater to the next, the operating theater to the next. You know, something's really going wrong with how they're developing pitchers. You know,
he is,
and so it's you know, you're seeing it. The results in the big leagues. You know, I mean, guys just aren't as durable as they once were.
He is a longtime decorated sports writer now living up in the great Philadelphia area where they don't really play Major League Baseball too much anymore.
That's right.
He's over in Haddonfield, New Jersey, and neighbors with my man Joe Flacco. The book is Like Any Normal Day, A Story of Devotion. You can go check him out, Mark Kram Jr., that's Kram. He's also on my Facebook page, but not on Twitter, which makes him one of the smart sports writers these days. And, of course, a Baltimore and an Oriole guy. You know, the Orioles' history and me writing this Peter Principles book, and this is the week I'm releasing Albert Bell, Sid Thrift, and then later this week, The Loss of Mike Messina. And I tell you, Mark, I've gone back, and the kind of journalism that was being done here by Ken Rosenthal, by Tom Boswell, by John Eisenberg, by people that were at the newspaper at the time, and I don't even want to get into the politics of fake news and, the president calling out media people and trying to ban media voices.
Oh, yeah,
Nothing pisses me off more than that as a guy who had my license to do sports journalism in Baltimore taken away by the creep that owns the baseball team. But I've gone back and I've unearthed all these stories. I haven't made any of this up. I haven't had to talk to a lot of different people. I mean, the story was played out in the Baltimore Sun and the Washington Post and Sports Illustrated and the New York Times and the LA Times. I mean, the Orioles' demise, Tim Kirchin wrote in ESPN magazine now 18 years ago, The Sopranos, like a takeoff on the Sopranos HBO show. And, there was so much abuse heaped on the Angelos, and then for a decade the team was so bad, no one even came around and sniffed anymore.
I know. It was a long drought.
Well, and the stadium was empty. The Ravens owned the city during that period. They still own the city, for crying out loud. I mean, did you ever think that football would come back here and usurp baseball the way it did? I mean, I know I talked to Kevin Byrne and, the Modell family before Art and David passed. They never, ever thought that they would be number one in Baltimore. They literally came here from Cleveland thinking, we're going to have some money, we're going to have a stadium, we're going to have a nice fan base, there's some Colts thing left over, but Jesus, they got Camden Yards and Cal Ripken. We're never going to be bigger than that,
But back in the day, the Colts were, as you know, in the '60s. That was the big story in town. The Colts. I mean, the Orioles were lucky they could draw anything. Well,
that's why they couldn't keep their free agents in the '70s, right? I mean, I've definitely talked to a lot of people about the history of the Orioles, and boy, they never made money. I mean, they were always as good as they were. They were a pauper franchise, truly.
What was that funny story Frank Cashin used to tell? I mean, a streaker ran out on the field at Memorial Stadium, and the cops came to him and said, "What do you want me to do with him?" And Cashin says, "Give him $50 and tell him to come back tomorrow."
I never heard that story.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
I mean, they that's why everybody was so anxious and excited about the possibility of Vec owning the team in the mid '70s, because I mean, he would really have a lot of different ideas, and the team was sort of great on the field but lousy at the box office. When I was a kid, I could walk up to Memorial Stadium, catch a ride with my neighbor on a Sunday, walk up and get a box seat and sit for $3.50 or $4 or whatever it was, and sit behind the dugout. I mean, it was unbelievable. I mean, the place was empty.
Well, we had the same childhood, man. I took the 22 bus out of Highlandtown, where your family's from, and out to Memorial Stadium. That G&A Coney Island hot dog, still my dear sponsor, Andy in Highlandtown, making those good hot dogs up there for me, and some French fries and gravy and whatnot. And the modern era for the Orioles, and for me, when I say it's getting a little slippery, a little sticky right now, boy, they got to get Scope signed, right? I mean, Machado, what are they going to do? The hardest part of the Angelos era, and I go back through the Frank Wren parts and the Peter Principles and Sid Thrift, and there's never really been a strategy around here other than what mood is the old man in today and what can we approach him about? And Buck seems to have managed to manage the old man better than most other people have. I think Duquette can't wait to get the hell out of here and go get another job. And no one wanted this job. And, there's a line of thinking that Buck is the only one that can get along with him. Peter would be the only one to hire Buck as a general manager because, quite frankly, Buck's not qualified to be a general manager. No one else would hire him in that role because it's a very specified, sabermetrics type of role at this point. But Buck might be the GM around here 2 years from now and hang around.
I got to tell you my favorite Peter Angelo's story.
Oh, I can't. Well, we have his shoes. Let me get a beer here.
A friend of mine, I won't tell you who it is, but he's a name that you would know immediately. He's been around forever. He was doing a magazine piece on Angelo's. This was probably back in the late 80s maybe, or whatever, soon after he bought the team.
93, okay.
Was it 93?
It was. It was about 4 weeks after the All-Star game.
Okay, very good. That makes sense then. So about 93, so he's sitting in the press box or Angelos' box, and this guy's telling him about what a great pitcher John Schmaltz is, who was with the Braves. And, and Angelo says, he hadn't heard of Schmaltz. He hadn't heard of him. He said, I got to write that down, and he wrote it down on a piece of paper. Schmaltz. I'll get my people to look into it.
Well,
how out of touch can you be?
Look, man, I know you work with John Stedman. I know we shared a mutual relationship with him, and it's incredible going back and doing the Peter Principles, how he was in Peter's lap. I mean, he loved Peter. He made Peter the Marylander of the Year at the Baltimore Sun in 1998. John wrote platitudes about what kind of owner Angelos was going to be. But in every reference, if you go back and John wrote, a half dozen stories about Peter, he says in every reference, he's not a baseball man. He did not grow up throwing his kids in the station wagon and taking them out to the ballpark. He never went to ball games. He wanted to be the mayor. He wanted to play God. He wanted to be politics. He wanted to be Donald Trump. He wanted to be all of that. He never really had time to go to the ballpark. He was not at all a baseball fan in any way. He never played baseball. He was a boxer as a kid.
Yeah, well, he grew up in East Baltimore, right?
Absolutely, Greektown.
Yeah, Greektown. So that's why John would have been, on the same page with him. John had that, awful, relationship with Robert Irsay.
Remember when he looked at John at the press conference and said, "You're a bad man. I'm not talking to you. You're a bad man." You covered Irsay a little bit in your day at the News American, did you?
A little bit, yeah. He was a drunk. He just
that was the word on him.
Oh yeah. Just really. That was so sad to see the Colts leave. My God, it's just. I was in Detroit at the time, and they sent me back to do a piece on it. How cowardly, the NFL should be ashamed of itself for let the Colts get out of town.
Well, we're happy with the Ravens at this point. He is Mark Cramp Jr., worked at the Detroit Free Press and the Baltimore News American. We are both alums of that group, also at the Philadelphia Daily News for the last 30 years where he's made a life up there. He contributes all sorts of things out on the web in writing spaces, including Like Any Normal Day, A Story of Devotion. Tell me about that a little bit, because you obviously have won some awards. You're famous for that, and I think we all write things to have people read them and think that they're good, right?
Yeah, well, it's that was a story that I kind of cultivated for years and years. It was about a young guy who was really a great high school quarterback outside of Philadelphia. And his senior year, he broke his neck in a game. A simple play could happen to anybody. It's one of those things where your whole life and everybody around you changes in an instant. And so, he tried to make the best of it. He was paralyzed from the neck down, and life wore him down. It was a grind. And eventually he talked his brother into 23 years later, his younger brother, who idolized him and had been a prospect for the Dodgers and kind of washed out with them, and fine athlete himself, and he talked his brother into taking him to Dr. Kevorkian, of all things. Can you imagine that?
Wow.
And so the story is about how that injury on the field just changed everyone's life. Not just Buddy Miley himself, but his family and his girlfriend, who he stayed in touch for years and years. And it's one of those stories that really tell you a little bit about the nature of football and the nature of life, really. So it won the Penn Award. It won the ESPN Penn Award for literary sports writing, and it's been optioned by a pretty prominent Hollywood guy, the guy that was the creator for American Horror Story. Actually, he's got the option on it, so maybe you'll see a movie one day.
Well, Mark, I certainly wish you luck with that. I know you've been head down on writing your next book on Joe Frazier. You're up there in the fighting city of Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love. And, I had Frazier on the show a couple times. I've met him. And
oh, did you?
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't right the last time he called me. He called me, and I had him on the air, and it was because we used to call him all the time. I mean, he used to come on NST. I bet he's, visited 12 times on the radio station over the years.
Oh, did he really?
Yeah, before the end. And I think anytime you're writing about Ali or Frazier, there's always an audience, and it's such an iconic thing. But it feels like every story's been told, right? I mean,
no,
and it hasn't been. Though. Yeah,
that was one of the reasons that I wanted to do the book, is because I really felt that there was a lot of us. That the same stories were being repeated over and over again, and there was much more of a man underneath the stories that we hear, and a life story to be told. And you'd be surprised. There's an awful lot of stuff that I've found that will take the story to another level, really.
Well, I can't wait to read it, and I'm going to send everybody out onto Facebook and onto the web. He is Mark Kram Jr., that's Kram, Baltimorean, Calvert Hall guy, Loyola guy, but he's in Philly, and so we'll try not to hold that against him when we bring him on here, because he is an Oriole fan. You're a season ticket holder down here, huh?
Yeah, Sunday game. I have a Sunday plan. I try to take a different friend each Sunday, and, we can sit there and, catch up and watch the game, and it's been a lot of fun. It's just killing me, this pitching staff. It's just...
of us.
It's just, it's not only that they just give up frozen ropes. I mean, it's like they have no clue what they're doing out there.
BP.
It's unbelievable. It's just, it's not even good high school pitching some days. It's unbelievable.
Well, if you get stuck on a Sunday, I live 2.5 blocks from Oriole Park at Camden Yards. I grew up over, in Dundalk, and I always wondered when I took the 22 bus what it would be like to live near the ballpark. I always wanted to live off of Ellerslie Avenue or 33rd Street or, somewhere off Greenmount. And, now I live 2 blocks from the ballpark. I haven't been to a game all year. So,
is that right?
If you come down, let me know. Well, I don't know if you know, the owner has been a little harsh with me over the last, been a little harsh, I think, with all the fans. I don't think he deserves support, and certainly in my case, I'm not giving him money. I do give him 4 hours of my day every day, and I'll be up late every night this week watching and opining, but I just don't give him money. It's my protest until he leaves the earth. So that's
after it's funny, after the Jimenez got beat 8-0 by the Cubs, I looked on my email list the next morning. They were asking, the Orioles had sent me a survey. I filled that out with alacrity. Let me tell you, because I let him have it with both barrels.
Well, and then you wrote him another check, and you're coming down next Sunday again. So hey, that's why
I'm contributing to the signing of Manny Machado and Jonathan Scope.
That's why it works, because people are loyal and they don't really care, and it doesn't really matter how people are treated.
Well,
that's the God's honest truth of sports in America, though.
I got to tell you something. The reason I like it, because I like the players. I like to see the Orioles play. Whatever they put out there, I like to see them play. As far as who the owner is, I really don't. It doesn't bother me much. but I like to see them win.
If he took your press credential, it'd probably bother you, though, right?
Oh yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
It would,
yeah. I mean, I don't come with the same from the same perspective that you do. Of course, I don't have the same experience.
Well, I think as a journalist, when you've been lied to again and again and again, like this clown running our government, you know, when you get up and lie to me as a journalist who's done this my whole life, and this is all you've done, and then expect me to lie for you, to put that in print with my name next to it. You know, that manure's not going to fly here, Mark. That doesn't work for me.
Let me tell you something, Nestor. You're right. Well, it seems like people with money feel like they can, you know, they wanted everything their way. You know, they don't feel like they can be accountable to anybody.
Well, that's our job as journalists, I think. You know, and we're sort of the last bastion to hold all sorts of places in life accountable. And next time we get together, we'll talk about the demise of the newspaper industry and what that's going to mean for America. So that's our next conversation. Mark, I loved having you on, man. Love that you're an Oriole fan. I love that you made a little time today. I really do appreciate you coming on. You're a little bit of a legend in my mind. I didn't even know you were real till I found you on Facebook, man.
A lot of people say that, but you know what? I really enjoyed it, and the Orioles are a lot of fun, and I hope that they put together a run.
Well, so do they. So do I. It's more fun talking about them when they win than when they lose. Mark Cramp Jr., Haddonfield, New Jersey, the pride of Philly, but really the pride of Calvert Hall and Loyola, joining us here. The story is like any normal day. You'll want to go check that out. And he's also working on a book on Joe Frazier after about 3 decades at the Philadelphia Daily News. You can find me out in the Buy a Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear from anywhere you are. The morning newspaper ships to your email inbox digitally each and every morning. It's free. Happens at 7 o'clock in the morning. It's all brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com, where it's still $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life. If there's any breaking news, you'll get it first on the WNST text service, even if it's bad news. Sometimes it is out of Owings Mills. That's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Dennis Colatzos will be here on Thursday driving you home from 3 until 5. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.